I think most of the folks we're expecting are here. So welcome. We'll go ahead and open this meeting of the Lampson Brook Farm Board. This is May 8th. It is 4:32. And I think I'll go ahead and start and have board members present introduce themselves. That will serve as introductions if we have any new members of the public in attendance, and serve as a roll call. So let's see. Jennifer, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jen Soper with the Department of Conservation and Recreation. It's nice to see everyone.
David?
Yes, David Haynes with the on the board with Belchertown Conservation Commission. Excuse me.
Wonderful. Jonathan? Oh, you may be muted. If folks are less familiar with Teams, on the top there is a little microphone symbol, and you are welcome to unmute yourself.
Okay, is that better?
That's great.
Okay, Jonathan Spiegel, representing the Belchertown Economic Development Industrial Corporation.
Thank you. And Gerard?
Good afternoon, Jared Kennedy with the Department of Agricultural Resources. I'm the designee for Commissioner Randall.
Thank you. Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Ryan, and I'm with the Belchertown Agricultural Commission.
Thank you. And I'm Vanessa Farney, representing EEA. I work with the Division of Conservation Services, and I am currently serving as chair. Excellent. So thank you all. With that, the first item here on the agenda is approval of past meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes from January 28th to approve. So if there are no comments or questions pertaining to that, does someone want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Does anyone second?
Second.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, and bear with me. We may have some folks joining us as we're continuing on the agenda here, and I just need a moment to let them in. Okay. So the next item on the agenda here, primary purpose, is the completion of the survey plan. And we have Greg Gould of Sherman and Friedrich with us, I believe, who's overseen this work. Just to remind folks, the board voted last June to approve the survey and send that to DCAM so that they could sign off on that, and Greg could take that to the Belchertown Planning Board and move forward with local approvals and recording. DCAM reviewed and commented on that survey last fall, consulted with DCR and MDAR to identify if they were satisfied with that. And there were a few items requested in particular, and I will go ahead and share that survey. I did circulate that to the board, but I will pull it up on my screen here so folks can look at that. May just take a moment. Let's see. Bear with me while I bring that up. Okay, can folks see this? Excellent. Let me shrink this down to a size. Okay. So DCAM provided comments, identified that MDAR had requested an access easement across some of the community farm parcels from George Hannum Street to back acreage to fields here in lot 148E. So that was addressed in this current version. And then DCR had identified a small correction to one of the notes pertaining to the snowmobile trail. That was also corrected. We brought this back to the board in January for review and approval. And it was requested then that we revisit the configuration of the lots adjacent to the hay barn. Oh, my apologies. Lot 148I and 148J. There was concern that the hay barn serves the community farm parcels. And I'm just going to show that here. Let's see. And that there was a request that this lot line configuration reflect that the hay barn, this structure here, really serves and is accessed from lot 9, 148-1. So a few members of the board, folks from NESFI, Pete Westover, Doug Albertson, we all met on site to evaluate this proposed change and agreed. I did follow up with Greg to discuss this, and he confirmed that was feasible and has since been out on the property to set some additional pins and make that change on the survey. And so with all of that completed, I'm hopeful that we can bring this forward for approval. But I will just pause here and ask Greg or Doug if you have anything that you would like to add at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, what I will add is that even with the funny shape to the new lot, that it still meets the zoning. It's in the new agricultural value added zone, which we provided flexible setbacks for that. Even so, Greg, you can clarify. As I recall, the setbacks might be at least 10 feet anyway. Are they not?
Yeah, I thought they were 20.
No, even better.
Yeah, but there's actually just enough room between those two, the two barns there to accommodate the setback. So there is no, all the structures meet zoning. And yeah, the only nuance is that the lot configuration of 148J does not match the approved zoning
Right.
zone. Which we are showing as the hatched dotted area. So
Right.
Yeah.
And then that part of lot 9 would where the building extends into the new zone. I think the intention is to keep it that way, so that it could still be used for retail or something. I think that's what I heard anyway, or that I imagine I heard.
As part of that, we did also, there was a request to add an easement coming off of Jackson Street because the road to the hay barn does not stay completely on 148J. It meanders to the back. So there's physical, legal access to the hay barn, and I know again the concern was that access from the hay barn to be able to reach the field at 148I, that was really the main reason to change the pins around over there. So all that was addressed.
Yeah,
Excellent.
good.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see folks. Okay, excellent. So in terms of next steps, once we vote to approve the survey, we can send this to DCAM to sign off. And the goal is to ensure that Greg can submit this to the planning board. After the planning board has approved, we can have this plan recorded at the registry. So, Greg, anything further to add there? Did I capture that correctly?
Yes, yes, correct. I think Jonathan had a question.
Oh, thank you. Jonathan?
I don't know that it affects the map at all or our approval of the map, but I was informed yesterday that DCAM has created a different view about the availability of the compost site and the remainder of the wooded lot that is attached to the compost site. and I don't have the details about that. I believe that was in a communication with Nestle relative to their lease. So my question would be whether having this map drawn as it is, with perhaps DCAM having a different view of that parcel, is okay for us to approve until we clarify that. I did not expect to raise the whole subject because it's not a communication to me, but it was my understanding from what I heard that in discussions with Nestle about the lease, DCAM had taken a different position about the compost site and the attached wooded lot, which is about the same size, on the opposite side of George Hannum.
I have not heard anything of that nature, and I'm not sure specifically what the communication was, so I'm not sure how that would or would not affect the survey, but my sense is unless they're proposing a different configuration.
No, a different availability is what I was told.
Yeah. Well, I have not heard anything from DCAM. Again, they did review this and provided their comments last fall. So I would expect that if they had any concerns about the compost site, they would have raised that with us. So I think in terms of what this board is considering, we've made the changes requested by MDAR and DCR, the board this past January. And I have not heard anything further from DCAM.
Yeah, I had not heard anything directly either, but we know that DCAM and Nestle have been having conversations. David Haynes may have some information about that.
My only comment is the plan is the plan, and it just shows that parcel that's separate, and that discussion can take place. I would think that discussion can take place aside from approving the plan.
That was my question. Yeah.
I don't see any restrictions labeled on the, we've talked about that staying in DCAM control because it is the old dump site. But I still think that all stands with the plan as it is, and it doesn't need to be, it shouldn't hold us up, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, the compost site, that's identified as a separate lot. It would remain a separate lot. The use that's being negotiated may change, but I don't think that affects the plan.
That's what I was.
I agree. The plan, the purpose of the plan is for boundary or for borders to delineate parcels, and if the rights change, that's something separate than the plan.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Hi, Jen Soper.
Hi, Jen.
Hi. In the chat, Kurt wrote that DCAM had approved the plan. Do you see that?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
And I got to pipe up. DCR still doesn't want to own it. That's it.
That's fine. The plan certainly doesn't address that. So again, these are boundaries. We've addressed the changes that were requested at the last board meeting. So at this point, I'd like very much to move forward. And if everyone is satisfied, we can vote to approve the survey, send it back to DCAM to sign off on, and Greg can proceed with planning board approvals. Is there any objection to that?
I move that we vote to approve the plan.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, if you can just go ahead and raise your hands. All right, it looks like, is that unanimous? It looks unanimous. Wonderful, approved. Thank you.
Vanessa, I just want to note that DCAM also has to notify the House and Senate Ways and Means committees of its certification.
Thank you for noting that.
Yeah, I think it's just a notification. It doesn't say in the legislation that they need to approve it. It's a notification that DCAM has to make.
Thank you for reminding me of that. One other item, and I want to say thank you, Greg. I appreciate your time on this.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure and make good use of your time. So I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I just
Unless
one
you have
question
anything else.
on the procedurally. Are we? Am I waiting for anything else, or can I proceed with putting the Mylar together? And I think they'll have to DCAM will have to sign the Form A application as owners.
Excellent. Yes, and I'm happy to coordinate with you offline, but I believe
Okay.
Bob O'Connor had provided them with the Form A. I don't know if that needs to be updated, so you and I can connect on that.
Yeah, let me check because I know it was based on before some of these smaller revisions were made. So I can run through that and see if we need a revised one. But in order to submit it to the planning board, DCAM, I will have to have that signed Form A and the Mylar plan.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Great. Well, we'll connect on that, and I would say I'm going to be in. I will follow up and make sure that DCAM has received this, is satisfied, and that we can proceed with that Form A and the Mylar.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great. So one additional note to follow up on your comment there, Gerard, is that so DCAM does need to notify the legislature that they have approved this plan. The other item is the management plan. Of course, that was sent to DCAM quite some time ago. DCAM did provide their comments or provide comments on that management plan with the survey last fall. They deferred to the board and to DCR and MDAR on comments. DCR did note that there was a specific correction to the management plan where it was identified that the compost, there was on page 10 a sentence saying the compost parcel is part of the northern forest parcel, which is incorrect. It's a separate lot. And so DCR did request that that be clarified, that is not part of the forest parcel. I think that is something that can be easily addressed. And if the board agrees, I would be happy to follow up with Pete to make that correction. MDAR is further exploring sort of how the management goals and current licensing practices mesh and are going to be exploring that further as they pursue licensing. I'm happy to, Gerard, I don't know if you have anything further to add, but my impression is that MDAR is satisfied with the management plan as it stands. And so happy to hear from you on that. But if to date, regarding DCAM's comments on the management plan, I believe we can address those with that one change to the sentence pertaining to the compost parcel and clarify that that is a separate parcel as it is referenced elsewhere in that management plan. So in my mind, that is a simple correction that we can make. And again, with that, we could notify DCAM that that the management plan remains approved and that they can proceed with that. Is there anything else that DCR or MDAR want to say on that item?
Other than we recognize that the management plan is a guide on how to manage the property, and the areas that aren't typically included in a license from the state would relate to the bird habitat and organic practices. And also public access. We've had some challenges around public access on one of our properties, significant problems in Northampton with people walking dogs and letting dogs loose in the fields. So those were the areas that we were somewhat concerned about. But we recognize that these are practices that have been occurring for a long time at Lampson Brook, and I think we can work with them within our program when we assume care and control.
Great, thank you. Okay, so if we're in agreement, I will note that correction in the management plan in response to DCAM, and once we have that, they can move forward to have both that document and the survey certified, as is referenced in the legislation, and notify the legislature. Those two pieces are complete. So I think that's excellent. It's nice to have closure on those two pieces. I think we just had Bob join us. So welcome, Bob, if you're here with us. The next item is a carryover from previous meetings. So the renewal of board appointments, nomination, and vote for vice chair. So again, this is something that was tabled from our meeting in June and again at our meeting in January. If folks recall, I did agree to serve as board chair to take on this responsibility, conditional upon identifying a vice chair that could assist in facilitating these meetings and just in general, if tasks come up that need to be shared. There was a proposal to seek a vice chair at that meeting in June, but we were over time. Folks needed to get moving. And so we identified that we would take it up at a future meeting. And January didn't provide time, so I want to come back to that. I have reached out to folks, I think just about all of you on this subject, and I just very much appreciate any support that folks can provide. So I kind of want to open it up for discussion, and hopefully we can consider a nomination for this role. And I can turn to someone for a little support, and we can nominate a vice chair. So.
Is there a difference between a state employee member versus a town representative for a position?
I don't know that there's a difference. I think it might bring a nice balance if we have someone from the town serving in that role.
It always seemed to me, actually, one thing I wanted to point out to board members, I see a lot of people raising their hands, but if you use the raise hand feature at the top of your screen where there's a hand, that's probably a better way to get Vanessa's attention than raising her hand. So
thank you. Yes, I'm looking around, but I can't, I have a smaller version of what you're seeing. So if your hand is outside my frame, I can't see that.
I don't see the
hand. Just at
you
the
don't see the
top,
hand?
There's a little raise, and you should see that. But anyways, David, did you have something you want to say? Oh, okay.
I agree that I think it should be somebody from the town. I think that would give a nice balance and feedback coming from the town to the board.
And Jonathan, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I would like to ask you, David, if you would be willing to take the vice chair position to help Vanessa coordinate the meetings and other kinds of things. Since you seem to participate fully, whether it's in a meeting or a site visit or whatever, I think Vanessa sort of framed the position as one of supporting and coordination and so on.
I would be happy to, having been the vice chairman of the Conservation Commission for 28 years, except for the 10 years that I was chairman. I'd much rather be a vice chairman than a chairman.
Well, in that case, I will nominate David Haynes as vice chair of the Lampson Brook Farmstead Board.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Tammy. Those in favor?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Gerard?
Yep.
All right, looks unanimous. Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you, David. I very much appreciate your contributions to this role.
Well,
Again, I know you have been involved in this work for quite some time, and that institutional knowledge and participation on behalf of the town is very welcome. So I'm happy to coordinate with you further. And as you can see, facilitating these meetings is helpful to have a second set of eyes on the room, and just make sure that folks who want to contribute to the conversation can. So,
well, I'm happy to do it, and I want to thank you for stepping up into very big shoes that you're filling, and every other member of the board that's been very supportive and offering their input and institutional knowledge. But thank you.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yes, and I will remind the board, the bylaws do identify that the board shall consist of a chair, vice chair, treasurer, and clerk. So there are still opportunities for further participation. I'll acknowledge that there's minimal need right now for the treasurer, and I am happy to continue in the clerk's duties, posting meeting agendas and minutes. So we can come back to those items, but certainly welcome further participation. So, okay. Well, with that concluded, we can move on to an update on the transfer of the commercial farmland. If folks recall, when we spoke in January, Barbara Hobson, Gerard, Raina with DCAM provided a brief update. DCAM is not here with us today, but I'm happy to have Barbara and Gerard. And as we know, DCAM and MDAR are pursuing transfer of the care and control of the commercial farm parcels. Based on the conversation we had in January, I understand that the state land licensing program provides a model for that. So I would be happy to turn it over for that update. Barbara or Gerard,
Sure.
Would you like to speak to that?
Did you want to do the update, Barbara, or would you like me to?
Yeah, you could start, Jared, and I can certainly jump in.
Barbara's certainly been in the weeds on this with DCAM, but we are in conversations with DCAM, as we stated at the last meeting, about transferring the care and control. They're supportive of taking that approach. DCAM also is executing with NESFI a 5-year license, or lease. So they're extending the lease with NESFI for the management of the property through 2030. And DCAM or NESFI has leases with the farmers on the commercial farm parcels. So in the course of taking care and control of the property, we would be continuing to honor the terms of the current lease that exists and that covers the commercial farm parcels as well as the rest of the property. So long as that lease is in place with NESFI, we would continue to honor it. In effect, we're really just stepping in and taking the place of DCAM. But the licenses or the leases that NESFI currently has with the farmers would remain. What else, Barbara? Am I missing anything?
Nope, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Tammy, you have a question? A comment?
Yeah, yesterday we had an AgCom meeting and a question was raised about why MDAR is getting this land, like how MDAR became a part of the conversation. And maybe this is taking us way off topic, but I'm curious how that happened. Or there were people in the Ag committee who were curious about that.
Yeah, I have no insights into that. It came through legislation.
Yeah.
It's not something that I'm aware that we were actively lobbying for. We certainly had a relationship with NESFI for many years just because of their educational and technical assistance functions. We certainly knew Judy Gillen very well, but I'm not entirely clear how that occurred. We have a state land licensing program that has a model for, how to license out state land. That was there. So whoever was, pushing the legislation, maybe Kurt or Bob, might have more insights, or Jonathan, I'm not sure.
Jonathan, did you have a comment?
Yes, about 12 or 14 years ago, when the future of the site was being looked at with some intensity, the model of having different segments move forward with different configuration or purpose, all trying to meld together a single opportunity for new farmers and existing farmers, that began to take shape. And the way in which it seemed these different areas that had identity, like the commercial farm parcels that have been identified since then, could be more easily transferred and maintained for their purpose. For example, by transferring the commercial farm partners to that agricultural program that MDAR has. And also there was an opportunity for recreation, conservation and recreation to look at the forested parcels, et cetera, that did not move in that direction. So that was the genesis of it. And a lot of that was retained in the work when the legislation was first being looked at, and then once it was drafted and passed, then the work of this board, Robert may have some additional insight. It's nice to see you back on the screen there, Robert.
That's pretty much what I told. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Does that address your question, Tammy?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Are there any further questions or comments on the update from MDAR?
I have one quick question. In our last meeting, I did ask Gerard about the question of the fees for those parcels once they become commercial, and that the concept had been part of what we were doing, that those fees would flow to the Lampson Brook Farmstead Board and then to the farm manager, or through the Farmstead Board to the farm manager ultimately, because of very little sources of revenue for keeping this all going. So that was one element. And the other one had to do with, I think we landed in a place, and you mentioned it, Gerard, that we would have MOAs or agreements about the practices, et cetera, and the relationship between those who were farming on the commercial farm parcels and the larger farm. And that certainly can be something worked on down the road. That's not immediate, but those were the only two things I remember that had not yet been penciled.
Yep, and they're noted for sure.
I know that we are still working on the legislation to identify how to set up the fund. And so I imagine, Gerard, there would need to be further coordination on that front as those licenses come to MDAR.
Yeah, and certainly as we work on the current control agreement with Nestle, it probably is not our typical current control agreement. So.
Right.
But Jonathan, those points are noted for further discussion with Nestle and our legal team.
Great. Okay. Anything further? Okay. Oops. All right. Moving on. So we have placeholder here for other items raised by the board. happy to open it up. Jonathan, you did reach out to me to share your interest in pursuing a grant opportunity, and I am happy to provide you a chance to share with the board a little bit more about your research and maybe share what your thinking is on that.
2 years ago, I submitted on behalf of the board a proposal to the one-stop portal, which now coordinates a lot of different state funding sources, to provide funds to essentially clean up the dairy complex, remove the buildings that had collapsed, et cetera, et cetera. We were not successful. At that time, we got some feedback about it and why it was not successful. But, you know, the dairy complex doesn't look any better than it did 2 years ago. And I guess my question to the board was whether or not that's something which the board would want to see resubmitted, modifications. It would require at least one or two other people to take a look at it. But I think fundamentally what we had last time is there. It's probably 80% good. The deadline is June 6th, I believe. That sticks in my head. I did not submit an expression of interest, which was invited, not required. And there was also, alongside of this, a request from, a question from NESFI about whether or not, if we were to resubmit, we might include cleaning up what's known as the root cellar, which is on the opposite side of, it's on the other side of Jackson Street, just up above the NESFI's office there, Jefferson House. My view of that is that I think NESFI, which actually has some architectural drawings for a reuse of that, might be in a better position to submit a proposal for that. And given that their lease has now been moved forward, as Jared reported, that might be a better opportunity for that than expanding the proposal for the dairy complex. So the question to the board would be whether or not it's something we should submit this year. I think we've still got 4 weeks to get it in before the deadline.
Thank you. I see a question here from Tammy, just asking whether you got any feedback on why the application was rejected, and also just asking about how much the grant is for.
Okay. I think the grant was, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the neighborhood of $125,000.
You said 25?
125.
125.
If I'm remembering correctly. The feedback had to do with insufficient information about how that was improving job opportunities in the town or commercial opportunities in the town, things we just didn't address in the proposal. But there was also a lot of competition, and even more so now for these grants. So I think there are other things which were, well, given higher preference by those who were reviewing. But I think those elements could be strengthened in the proposal.
And just a couple of other points of clarification. So I guess one question, do you anticipate requesting the 125? Does that remain sufficient? And then I had the question about sort of who would be the grantee, what the mechanism is for the grant. So do you want to talk to the board a little bit about that?
I'm not 100% sure of how mass development, which manages a lot of those funds, would approach this. But our experience with what's called Parcel D on Turkey Hill Road, a grant awarded a year ago to BDIC, they hold the funds and disperse the funds. They hire the contractors. It's not a burden on the Economic Development Industrial Corporation, which owns the property. I'm assuming that if it's the same pool of money, that mass development would also holding the funds. That's their practice, dispersing the funds. As a board, I don't know that we would get anything out of that directly.
So just to clarify, the funding would be held by Mass Development, and Mass Development would be pursuing the work? Is that
That's
how
my
this
assumption.
works?
Correct. They would look to achieve a certain set of goals, which would be listed in the proposal, and work with our board to clarify that, set a schedule, and then they go through the regular bidding process to bring in the right contractors to achieve the goals that are that have been approved.
So
I don't know if 125,000 is the right number anymore.
Right.
And that's one thing we might look at.
I have a question. Is this something that we can actually do? And DCAM owns the property. It hasn't been transferred. It's their property. We don't have a trust set up. Though you seem to be saying that the funding is held by Mass Development, and that we wouldn't have to have a trust set up to hold the funds were we to receive them.
No, what I'm saying is that's how they habitually do it. And whether we are authorized by the legislature to seek funds, to hold funds, and we qualify as a body politic to apply for these funds. I think we know that DCAM is interested in seeing that site cleaned up. That's something which they worked with NESFI on and were very pointed about. I think it's an element to explore. The issue of us applying and DCAM owning never came up in the review of the proposal last time.
I know we spoke and discussed that there should probably be some coordination with DCAM if the board elects to pursue this, because as Gerard pointed out, they are the landowner, so they would need to be consulted. Hi, Bob. I'm curious to know if you have some perspective on this as well, because you were involved in this. So, yeah. Oh, you are muted. Are you able
Top
to
of your
unmute?
screen, Bob. I'm educated.
Here we go. Yep, you look like you should be unmuted. Try now. No. It's probably in your computer settings somewhere. The audio settings on your computer. You may need to set that to personal, or there may be a different setting there. So I know I've run into that issue before.
I found the button just to the left of the top right, the leave the meeting button. There's a mic button up there.
Yeah, that looks to be unmuted, but it might be his audio settings on his computer. Well, while Bob tinkers with that, we'll give you a moment, Bob, to see if you can get that working. Are there other questions or comments from other members of the board? I'm interested to hear from other folks on this who may have participated in the conversation last year.
I think it would be helpful to see the actual application, the RFR, or whatever it is that they are using for the bid for us to review. I'm just not sure how we would manage the funds or manage the project without further reviewing the actual document.
I'm assuming that the amount came about because of the engineering report. So that if that clarifies that, but yes, times have changed, and 125,000 doesn't buy what it did last year.
Mhm. So I'm hearing, Jonathan, I'm hearing a request for us to have an opportunity to review that RFR. And if you have the proposal from last year or anything else that you've put together, maybe that would be useful to the board. We could find a way to circulate that.
Do that, and what you will have is a link to the one-stop portal, which is now a state-run portal, which aggregates a lot of funding sources. And I'll try to give you clear instructions on how to focus in on the one I'm suggesting, which lists all of that. But the deadline is June 6th. So, you know, the dairy complex is not going anywhere this year. So if we want to wait till next year, we can do that too. I don't know how we approve it as a board if we don't do it today. And I'm not asking you to do it today. It's just a question that, well, just a question.
Yeah, and maybe we should determine sort of how a proposal. I think there's a couple things here, and I do see a couple comments in the chat as well. So I think we need to determine, you know, how to follow up with DCAM and confirm that they would be in support.
Okay.
I see, Kurt, you have a comment there that DCAM has been supportive of site cleanup in the past. So assuming the arrangement with Mass Development is proper, they may well be just fine with it. They do want the site addressed, just as others do. So, but we could certainly follow up with Raina and confirm that. And Bob dropped in the chat here. I think the board should use the consultant engineering report on the board website outlining the cleanup on the site to guide the application. It should be more like 1.5 million. It seems like a good idea. So I think the board has some more, would like to see the RFR and maybe a proposal. I think if the board is going to vote to approve anything, we would need that. So Jonathan, we'll have to figure out if that June 6th deadline provides you time to develop something to bring back to this board. We could reconvene if we feel like it's something that we need to vote on. Alternatively, we could find a way to circulate materials just for review if folks
Right.
are
I'll
supportive
get that
of the.
this weekend to everybody.
Okay. That would be helpful as well if we have something we can share with DCAM to respond to, I think. And then I think maybe just clarifying the mechanism for that grant and confirming, because as you mentioned, although we are a body politic and sort of authorized to seek funds and hold funds, I don't know if there's further work that would be needed to set that mechanism up. So if there is somehow an expectation that we're going to hold funds or pursue work or any of that, you know, that's something that we would need to consider. So right now, I think the way you're proposing it, it would not necessarily require the board to hold funds or release funds or contract or pursue work directly. That would be facilitated through Mass Development. And then Kurt just dropped in the chat here a note that DCAM may in fact be on the one-stop review committee. So they might actually have access to the prior proposal. So that might be useful. So we can find out. That's a very helpful suggestion, Kurt. And so Jonathan, do you have access to the engineering report that's on the website?
I do, if it's on the website.
Okay, great. All right, well, let me know if you need me to send that to you at all, and I can dig it out.
Thank you.
Other comments on this issue, on this item? Comments, questions? I'm not hearing any objection to pursuing this. I think we're all probably supportive of anything we can do to clean the site up. So very much appreciate your work on this, Jonathan. And so we'll look for, if you want to circulate those materials, I can reach out and find out if we can get a hold of the previous proposal, but if you have that material and you want to update that and circulate that, that might actually be even better. Okay. So we'll circulate those materials. Do folks feel like that's something that we need to reconvene to vote on submitting? I'm seeing
I would
nods
say
from
so.
David.
Yeah, as a public body, I think we would
I
need
think
to.
so. Okay. Okay, so we'll look at calendars. We'll look at an opportunity to reconvene and vote on that proposal after that's been circulated next week. Does that seem reasonable, Jonathan? And we'll do so before June 6th somehow. So, I'll send out an email and get a sense for people's availability. Bob, are you still unable to speak with us directly? It would seem so, huh? All right, well, that's unfortunate, but any other items? Oh.
One thing I would like to see in that proposal is that, and it's not going to be a surprise for people to hear me say this, I'd like to see at least a sign that says greenhouse on it preserved. The end of the building, I'd like to see that preserved because Bob painted that on 40-something years ago. And it would be a great honor.
All right.
50 years ago.
You'll have to get Bob to paint it.
Hopefully it's a sign that can be taken off and reattached. I'm not sure, but
it's painted on the wall.
We might have to get Bob back out there to repaint it then.
Better believe
if that's needed.
I don't think it was quite 50 years ago. He's not Methuselah.
I've been accused of being that. It was 45, I think. I think he said it was 81 or 80. So I exaggerate.
You exaggerate. I need to beg off by 5:30, everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any other items for discussion from the board?
I think Bob has a question in the comments.
Thank you. So Bob asks, can the board authorize Jonathan to submit the application instead of having to meet again? That's certainly something we could consider. We don't have the proposal in front of us. So how do folks feel about that? Do we see any concern with that? It is a short timeline, so.
I mean, can we do it by email where we're not talking to each other, but we just get back? Because if we talk to each other, that's an open meeting law violation. So, but if we get back to Vanessa and Jonathan with our input into it, and then basically come up with, Vanessa comes up with a body count. Is that legal? I don't know. That's all beyond me.
Yeah, I think open meeting law would require that if we're going to take a vote, we do so together in a public forum. I'm just looking here. Kurt hasn't a comment. If he just wanted to understand if the board had approved this last time, and if so, it was mentioned that the proposal is likely to be very similar. I did go back to meeting minutes when Jonathan and I connected on this. I could not find any record of a vote on this. So if anyone else is aware of one,
No,
I appreciate that.
I remember
Okay.
Jonathan telling us at the meeting that he had submitted it on behalf of the.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the Wild West days.
So alternatively, we could vote to authorize Jonathan to submit the proposal on behalf of the board, if folks are comfortable with that. So a couple choices here. We could vote to confirm Jonathan may proceed to submit that, or we can agree to reconvene in a few weeks to vote to approve the application itself. Jen?
Jonathan
Another
could
thought?
submit the proposal, and then if it gets granted and the board says, yuck, we don't like what Jonathan wrote in that proposal, we didn't agree to, I don't know, take out the trash, we could not accept the grant. So that way, Jonathan, if we vote yes, please go ahead and submit a proposal. We have on record open meeting, we clear that bar, and then we take a next step if and when the grant is successful. We don't hold up the June 6th deadline issue.
Yep. And I think the board could continue to provide input on that proposal in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's going to submit something on behalf of the board, I think the board should review it before he submits it, not after it's been awarded. I mean, I guess there isn't really a downside, is there, to Jonathan submitting the application? But I think it would be prudent for us to at least have a chance to review it before it goes. And if it's not a violation of the open meeting law and we can conduct all of this over email and then give him the go-ahead, I think that would be fine. Or give him the go-ahead now that we're going to review the proposal, but he has the authorization from the board to submit it once we've all had a chance to provide input. And
So I
give a
guess
deadline for input.
Yeah.
Gerard, had a motion?
Oh, could be.
I mean, it sounds like the only thing that Jonathan's going to be adding is language about job creation and benefits to the town. So I mean, I think the rest of it sounds like the rest of the grant application stands as it was originally, so.
Mm-hmm. So there's a proposal, we could authorize the submission pending any further amendments proposed by the board
By a certain date.
by a certain date.
I mean, this is the 8th, so, I mean, the 18th, the 15th.
Well, give it a little more time. I would say maybe the 25th or whatever.
25th. So
Yeah.
by the 25th, the board should provide all of its input into the grant, and
Well,
then Jonathan's authorized to submit it.
the 25th is a Sunday, so let's pick a weekday. And let's go with
26th.
the 23rd, because the 26th is Memorial Day.
Good catch. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate the fact you have your calendar open. That's excellent.
Cub Scouts, doing great.
Nicely done. So I'm hearing, is there a motion to authorize the submission? I'm just trying to capture this. Authorize the submission of the one-stop grant subject to amendments proposed by the board provided to Jonathan by May 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Raise
Aye.
your little hands. Approved. Okay, excellent. Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Very much appreciate your work. And so we'll look for something circulated next week. Does that seem reasonable?
We should all have it Monday morning. I'm going to do it this weekend.
Great, wonderful.
Okay.
Great. Okay. If there's nothing further, I'll turn it over for public. Oh,
I'd like to flag something.
yes.
Just that MDAR is running a 4-week series of workshops about cultivating strong agricultural nonprofits. So the 4 modules cover board development, membership engagement, financial sustainability, and communication and outreach. There's a sign up. It's being run remotely. Starts on 14th, and they're in the evenings. They're about an hour and a half. So the board members might be interested in attending any of those sessions, and I will put in the chat a link. We've had about 94 individuals sign up already, about 30 plus organizations. So there's clearly an appetite for this in the nonprofit world, but there could be something there that we could learn as well that we could apply to this board.
Thank you. I saw Tammy give you the thumbs up, so very much appreciated. And so that link is in the chat, and I can also circulate it via email if that's easier for folks after the meeting.
I would see it.
Okay. Jonathan?
You're muted.
Jonathan, did you raise your hand? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Just to flag a couple of things that we had been discussing over the last couple of years and not really found any resolution for, but at different times seemed important. Those two things are access for the different parcels. For example, for access through the community farm to the woodlot, access agreements for, and then parking and issues of liability relating to cross-parcel access or use, whether those have to be done through agreements, whether we have to do something as a board relative to that. It's, we never finished those conversations off. I guess I would add to that also, at one point we considered creating a CC&R to cover some of that and to cover the inter-area collaboration to make it easier for the farm manager to do that role. These are just things that we haven't had a final decision on one way or another. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for flagging that. I haven't been privy to conversations regarding this item, so I don't know if anyone has anything further to add. My sense is those are things that we should probably come back to for discussion. So we'll just make a formal note of that in the minutes. Okay. All right. Well, it's a little bit past 5:30. There's nothing further to discuss. I will open it up for any public comment. Any final questions or comments from the board before we do so? I have a hand raised here by Pat. Excellent. Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. Pat.
So I just want to share that NESV has signed a lease with DCAM till the end of 2030, and that the compost site has been taken out of the lease, so there's no more access to that for us. Did I say that right, Sarah?
Is that good or bad?
The compost site?
Yeah.
That, you know.
Like, were
It's
you
okay.
guys using it is my question, I guess.
We were leasing that site out to people that were doing composting, but it's certainly understandable that DCAM wants to protect the landfill and keep people out of there. Makes sense.
Thanks.
And the woodlot that's there is not part of the land compost site.
Okay.
That's all.
Appreciate that update. I'm pleased that that DCAM was able to move forward with that lease. I'm sure NESV is quite relieved. And I'm hearing that there was a change there to the compost, but there's no significant concern with that right now. Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
So my hand
Huh?
is still up. Also, I can't remember if I shared this before or not, but NESFI has received a grant from the community preservation to replace the roof on the horse barn. And the next leg of this is just to get town meeting approval. But we're pretty sure, and that'll happen in July. And DCAM has given us their approval to go forward with it.
Wonderful.
That's
Great.
fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Those are some good updates. Really pleased. Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, I guess I would move to adjourn this meeting of the Lampson Brook Farm Board.
So moved, or second. Was that a motion?
David, you make a motion. Is it second?
So moved. I move, we move.
All right, excellent.